Yastveka viro dirato vijigye. Danur dvitiya kakubashchatasraha. Aho pratapi driyater bakarte. Sorry. Rajarshi varyena vinapitena. Yastveka viro dirato vijigye. Danur dvitiya kakubashchatasraha.
Ato pritapi driyati ripakarte. Aho pritapi driyati ripakarte. Rajar shivaryena vinapitena. Rajar shivaryena vinapitena. Yastveka viro dirato vijigye. Yastveka viro dirato vijigye. Hanor dvitiya kakubashchatasraha. Hanor dvitiya
Kakubashchatasraha.
Aho pritapi driyate ripakarte.
Aho pratapi driyater bakarte.
Rajar shivaryena vinapitena.
Rajar shivaryena vinapitena.
Yastveka viro dirato vijigye.
Yastveka viro dirato vijigye.
Danur dvitiya kakubashchatasraha.
Hanor dvitiya kakubashchatasraha. Aho pratapi driyater pakarte.
Ato pritapi driyater pakarte.
Rajar shivaryena vinapitena.
Rajar shivaryena vinapitena.
Yastveka viro dirato vijigye.
Yastveka viro dirato vijigye.
Hanor dvitiya kakubashchatasraha.
Hanor dvitiya kakubashchatasraha.
Ato pratapi driyater bakarte.
Ato pritapi driyater pakarte.
Raja shivaryena vinapitena.
Rajar shivaryena vinapitena.
Yastveka viro dirato vijigye.
Yastveka viro dirato vijigye.
Hanor dvitiya kakubashchatasraha.
Hanor dvitiya kakubashchatasraha.
Okay, Mataji's.
Aho pratapi driyate ripakarte. Rajar shivaryena vinapitena.
Yastveka viro dirato vijigye. Hanor dvitiya kakubashchatasraha.
Rajavi driyater bakarte.
Rajar
Varyena vinapitena.
Yastveka viro dirato vijigye. Hanor dvitiya kakubashchatasraha.
Aho pratapi driyate ripakarte. Rajar shivaryena vinapitena.
Yastveka viro dirato
To vijigye. Danur dvitiya kakubashchatasraha. Aho, O my Lord, Prata, Kunti, Api, also, Driyate, bears her life, Arbhaka Arte, for the sake of fatherless children, Rajarshi, King Pandu, Varyena, the best, Vina Api, without him, Tena, him, Yaha, one who, two, but, Eka, alone, Viraha, the warrior, Adirataha, commander, Vijigye, could conquer, Danuhu, the bow, Dvitiyaha, the second, Kakubaha, directions, Chatasraha, 4. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: O my Lord, is Pratha still living? She lived only for the sake of her fatherless children. Otherwise it was impossible for her to live without King Pandu, who was the greatest commander and who alone conquered the 4 directions simply with the help of a second bow. Purport: a faithful wife cannot live without her lord, the husband, and therefore all widows used to voluntarily embrace the burning fire which consumed the dead husband. This system was very common in India because all the wives were chaste and faithful to their husbands. Later on, with the advent of the age of Kali, the wives gradually began to be less adherent to their husbands, and the voluntary embrace of the fire by the widows became a thing of the past. Very recently, the system was abolished, since the voluntary system had become a forcible social custom. When Maharaj Pandu died, both his wives, namely Kunti and Madri, were prepared to embrace the fire, but Madri requested Kunti to live for the sake of the younger children, the 5 Pandavas. This was agreed upon by Kunti at the added request of Vyasadeva. In spite of her great bereavement, Kunti decided to live, not to enjoy life in the absence of her husband, but only to give protection to the children. This incident is referred to here by Vidura because he knew all the facts about his sister-in-law Kunti Devi. It is understood that Maharaj Pandu was a great warrior and that he alone, with the help of bow and arrow, could conquer the world's 4 directions. In the absence of such a husband, it was almost impossible for Kunti to live on, even as a widow, but she had to do it for the sake of the 5 children. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Karamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sadivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshri Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tribhyascha Kripasinubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashchati Deshatarine Yasa Devi Parabhaktir Yata Devi Tatagaro Tasyate Katitahirta Prakashante Mahatmana Vagisha Yasa Vadane Lakshmi Yasa Chavakshasi Yasyaste Hriday Samvittam Nasimham Maham Bhaje Aho Pratapi Driyate Bakarte Rajarshi Varyena Vinapitena Yastveka Viro Dirato Vijigye Danor Dvitiya Kakubashchatasraha. O Lord, O my Lord, is Pratha still living? She lived only for the sake of her fatherless children. Otherwise it was impossible for her to live without King Pandu, who was the greatest commander and who alone conquered the 4 directions simply with the help of a second bow. So we're continuing on with Vidura asking all these questions about all these different loved ones, relatives, and such. Here he's specifically asking about Queen Kunti and speaking about her glories, that she was living on for the sake of her children that were without a father. I don't know really anything about the Mahabharata other than the basics about the Battle of Kurukshetra and such, but just from some basic research, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that I looked up just about how King Pandu, Maharaj Pandu, left this world. And from what I saw, it seems like he was cursed. So I guess it's kind of similar to the story of Maharaj Pariksha, that he was in the forest and he was there hunting, and he killed some deer. They were actually sages, and those sages ended up cursing him that he would die if he basically came in touch with a woman or something like that. And then he lived many years celibate, and then he united with one of his wives. I guess it was the other wife, not Queen Kunti. And at that moment, he fell over and died. Again, I'm not sure if that's exactly correct, but either way, he left this world, and the two wives were prepared to walk into the fire to give up their lives as well because of their grief, their bereavement from the loss of their beloved husband. And this is a sign of chastity in Vedic culture. This is a sign of a dharmic wife that is unable to bear the thought of even living in this world without their husband. And nowadays, especially in the West, you can't even conceive of such a thing. It seems actually almost abusive, as Prabhupada is speaking of, that this has become a thing of the past. In the past, it was that they would voluntarily embrace the fire, these widows. And very recently, the system was abolished because the voluntary system had become a forcible social custom that wives were not willing to do this, and they were forced by relatives and family members to walk into the fire and give up their life against their will. And so this was outlawed, and now it's no longer practiced. I saw in another purport, I think it was at the end of the 4th canto, that Prabhupada actually mentioned that he had seen, I think he's mentioned that he had seen this personally in 1936 or something. As recently as 1936 it was occurring. So it's not such an ancient practice actually. It was practiced until pretty recently. But like I said, there's no idea of this these days because there's also not much idea of chastity. The common thing nowadays is that divorce is over 50% of all marriages end in this divorce. And so it's not only that there's no chastity where the wife feels like she'll die if the husband leaves this world, but she's voluntarily leaving the husband, or the husband's voluntarily leaving the wife, and then they go on and get remarried and divorced again and remarried again so many times. I know a few people just from like growing up, my neighborhood, that they're like serial monogamists, I guess is what they're called, where they're just divorced, married over and over again. They have 4 or 5 different wives over their life. And I was always like wondering, like, how does like that 4th or 5th wife not like question, like, wait, like, is he gonna like leave me too? Like, no, I'm the one definitely that he's gonna stay with. And it's not always men that do it, but women do it too. But it's just kind of a strange trend to me, and it's always looked down upon. It's like seen as very low class to do such a thing. For anybody that has, is lucky, their parents are still together. Their parents are their only partners that they've ever had, and they have remained married for their whole life. So it's a very rare thing, actually. Anyways, even if there are some marriages that are lasting in this life, the idea of the husband dying and the wife walking into a fire is still completely absurd to Western minds, Western ideas. There is an occurrence of, especially in old age, when married couples are a little bit older, maybe the one of them leaves, one of them dies, and very shortly after that, the other one will just die, and it's kind of from grief at that point. It's not that they had some kind of medical condition. They'd been living with their spouse their whole life, and they couldn't bear to live without them. So they just kind of lost the will to live at that point. But this again, this dying for your loved ones is one thing, and oftentimes in the media and in this culture, they're seen as very heroic if you die for the sake of someone else. If you walk into a house fire to save your child, or people go into a fire to save their dog or their cat or something like that, or just to save your loved ones, or just to save a stranger is even actually more praised. But the idea of committing suicide, actually, to voluntarily lose your life just from grief, from someone that you love dying, is actually completely unheard of, and it's very looked down upon, you could say. There are cases, of course, of people that are scorned lovers, that maybe their significant other cheated on them or something, and then they end up killing themselves, or they kill the other person and then themselves. But this isn't looked at as anything good. And in Vedic culture, it's understood that the wife walking into this fire is actually a dharmic thing to do. This is the proper thing. To feel so much attachment for their husband that they walk into that fire. And this is because they live to serve their husband. We see at the end of the 4th canto, what is his name? When this whole allegory was happening, and Maharaj Prachina Barishat, and he takes on the body of a woman, Puranjana. Puranjana becomes a woman in the next life, is the name of this chapter. And in that life, it's because, anyways, in his previous life, he was thinking of his wife at the time of death, and he took on the body of a woman in the next life. And in that scenario, he was serving, or she was serving her husband. And at some point, the husband ended up leaving his body, and she walked into the fire. So we see that the Vedic role of women in that time is that, and I mean, in all times, is to serve their husband nicely. And by doing such things, they actually get all the benefit of their husbands performing devotional service and all of his pious activities. So it's not that the woman has to separately endeavor for achieving perfection on her own accord. She simply serves the husband nicely and assists him in his devotional service. And in this way, she's able to attain perfection as well. This is why it's said, I don't remember the exact details of who was saying this, but it was asked, what is the best yuga and the best varna and the best, male or female, right, to be born into? And then the answer was that Kali Yuga, Shudra, and woman. These were all counterintuitive to what might have been thought, that you should be born in Satya Yuga as a Brahmana. And this is explained that because in Kali Yuga it's very simple, you just have to chant the holy names of the Lord, Harinama, Harinama, Harinama Eva Kevalam, in order to achieve perfection. It's not that you have to go through thousands of years of severe austerities and meditation and unbroken meditation and such yogic practices. You simply chant the holy names of the Lord, and to be a Shudra is best because you have to serve. You have to serve the higher caste, and through that you're able to achieve perfection. And then again, to be a woman is also better because you just simply serve your husband, and it's actually much easier than having the more responsibility, as in the body of a man, and then you're made to do so many other things, perform all these sacrifices, etc. Whereas the woman just has to simply follow the husband and serve him, and she achieves all the same benefits. So, Kunti, she wanted to go into the fire here. She's explained that when Maharaj Pandu died, both his wives, namely Kunti and Madri, were prepared to embrace the fire. But Madri requested Kunti to live for the sake of the younger children, the 5 Pandavas. This was agreed upon by Kunti at the added request of Vyasadeva. In spite of her great bereavement, Kunti decided to live, not to enjoy life in the absence of her husband, but only to give protection to the children. So this is an important point, that she really didn't want to live on. She wanted to go into the fire with the other co-wife, Madri, but they had young children, and so due to her request, and then Vyasadeva also requested, she agreed. Okay, I'll live on, but of course it's not that she lives on so that she can, as in current times, it might be that the widow lives on so that she can go on, get another husband, remarry, kind of forget about her old life and start a new family even. You see this in modern society. Enjoy life, go on vacation, whatever. Just try to continue enjoying her senses. But on the contrary, Kunti only lived to give protection to the children, not to enjoy life in the absence of her husband. So this was her duty, and this was a very difficult thing for her to do, again, because she's living in separation from her beloved husband, and having to live with that pain. But in order to do the higher thing, in order to protect the children that need to be protected, she had to stick around and do that. And we see, of course, in the Mahabharata, so many times the Kurus try to kill all of them. They set their house on fire and poison them and all these things. And so, Kunti was there to protect the children, and of course she gave her famous prayers that, please send us more and more of these trials and tribulations, so that we can remember you more, Krishna. So they went through so much trouble. It would have been much easier for her just to walk into that fire and end her life there. But she went through so many different trials and tribulations after that, and in order to serve the children and help protect them. And so I was just thinking about how this is kind of analogous to our life, how it applies to us. I don't think any of us are going to walk into a fire anytime soon, or think about doing that. But, these children, the Pandavas, I was thinking maybe they could be compared to the orders of the spiritual master. And there's this amazing, again, like I was referring to this King Puranjana, part of the fourth canto, the end of the fourth canto. Prabhupada was explaining in the purports, and Mukundadatta Prabhu actually mentioned this the other day. Prabhupada is explaining in so many of these purports that the husband can be compared to the spiritual master, and the wife can be compared to the disciple, and that the wife's life is to serve the husband, and the disciple's life is to serve the spiritual master, to serve the orders of the spiritual master. And the disciple should be willing to walk into that fire for the sake of pleasing the spiritual master, for the sake of serving the spiritual master. We should have that intense mentality, that intense commitment, dedication to the orders of the spiritual master, to where we're willing to give up our entire lives just for the sake of pleasing him. And there's a couple of passages from that section of the Bhagavatam, the purports, that I wanted to read out. So here's one. If a woman is fortunate enough to be the wife of a pure devotee, she can serve her husband without any desire for sense gratification. If she remains engaged in the service of her exalted husband, she will automatically attain the spiritual perfections of her husband. If a disciple gets a bona fide spiritual master, simply by satisfying him, he can attain a similar opportunity to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So even if we are completely unqualified, as myself, and have no good qualifications, no background, and no intelligence, no ability to understand this transcendental knowledge, no good qualities at all, if we simply satisfy the spiritual master, we can attain a similar opportunity to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the spiritual master is on such a higher level than us, and we can see that so easily, with our spiritual master here, and just spending time around him. We can see that he's fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, and that we are completely insignificant in comparison. Mahotsa Prabhu was telling me this the other day, that when he's around Maharaj, he just feels like so insignificant, so just tiny. And it's really true, it's, if you can really have the eyes to see it, as I'm trying to cultivate. Sometimes, when you're around him, you can see that I'm just this tiny speck of dust, and he's so, larger than life, you could say. And so he's directly in touch with Krishna. He's directly serving Krishna in intimate association with Srila Prabhupada and the whole Guru Parampara and Krishna himself. And so simply by clinging to his lotus feet, this Shri Guru Charane Rati Esehu Tamagati, that attachment to the lotus feet of the spiritual master is the highest goal. Uttamagati is the highest goal. And if we can simply attain that, then we can also attain a similar opportunity to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's not that we have to become some giant big Daru and some big pundit and memorize the whole Bhagavad Gita right now. And I mean it's good to do. We should strive to do these kinds of things and become very studious, very learned in the Shastra and all these things. But simply by surrendering and having this surrendered attitude, I also said this, Yasya Devi Parabhaktir, Yata Devi Tatagaro, Tasyate Katitahirta, Prakashante Mahatmana, that simply by having faith in the spiritual master and in Krishna, all the purports of the Vedic literature is automatically revealed. And so having faith is also seen by following the orders and by enthusiastically serving the spiritual master in order to please him. We're seeing that again, not to put him on the spot, but Mahotsa Prabhu, he's such a great example of that. All the devotees here are, of course, examples of that as well. But Mahotsa Prabhu was so enthusiastic, so fired up, and you see how much he's pleasing his spiritual master. You see that he's pleasing the whole Guru Parampara, and you see the ecstasy that he's receiving from that, the bliss that he's feeling from that, and when he did this 55 Bhagavatams, again, I mentioned it in a class before, but I didn't think it was possible to do that to Westerners, and then he did it. And, one thing that kind of struck me recently is that he came back from that trip to Colorado, and he immediately said, instead of saying, oh, that's so amazing what I did, I can't believe I did that, wow, I'm really great, this is awesome. He wasn't really basking in it and he was happy, but he wasn't just content, he wasn't okay, I did that, now I can just take a break for some time. He immediately started talking about, I have big plans, I have some really big plans I'm working on. Even though after he just did that, that was a big plan, to do that. And he's constantly meditating on the next thing. And where was that? This that for one who constantly meditates on the orders of the spiritual master, this is how you achieve perfection. Let me see if I can find exactly where it was. Yeah, okay. When the servant meditates upon the order of the spiritual master, he becomes endowed with the ability to fulfill that order. So if we simply meditate on this order, to distribute books and to establish Daiva Varanashram farm communities, and to spread this movement far and wide, preach Krishna consciousness in every town and village, please Srila Prabhupada and everything we're doing, and live according to Srila Prabhupada's orders, do everything in our days should be centered around Krishna consciousness, waking up early, doing all of these small little things, cleanliness standards, cooking nice prasadam, chanting our rounds attentively, reading attentively, hearing attentively, kirtan, being enthusiastic, fired up in the kirtan, trying to please Krishna and the Guru Parampara in everything we do. We can automatically get the potency, the ability to fulfill the order, even if it seems completely insurmountable. Like I said, it did seem for me that Mahotsa Prabhu could distribute so many Bhagavatams to Westerners in one day. There's another quote from this same section of the Bhagavatam that I wanted to read as well. It's just talking about how a true disciple is willing to put his entire life on the line. He's willing to lose this life, like it's nothing, in order to please the spiritual master, in order to serve the spiritual master. And so this is from the, I believe it's, okay, here it's 42850, it's the purport, towards the end of the purport. And Prabhupada says, a devoted disciple of the spiritual master would rather die with the spiritual master than fail to execute the spiritual master's mission. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down upon this earth to reestablish the principles of religion, so his representative, the spiritual master, also comes to reestablish religious principles. It is the duty of the disciples to take charge of the mission of the spiritual master and execute it properly. Otherwise, the disciple should decide to die along with the spiritual master. In other words, to execute the will of the spiritual master, the disciple should be prepared to lay down his life and abandon all personal considerations. So abandon all personal considerations. Don't think about your own comfort, your own happiness, your own future, all these things, like what am I going to do in my life? How am I going to continue on? How will I make money? What am I going to do in my old age? Who's going to take care of me? All this. Don't worry about all that. Krishna will take care of you. I remember when I first came, I was saying this kind of thing, and Moses said, bro, like, Krishna will take care of you. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're worrying about being taken care of by someone, but nobody can actually take care of you. I mean, it's like these fallible soldiers, your family, relatives, friends, all these people, they can't actually take care of you. In your old age, Krishna is the only one that's going to take care of you. And even if your physical body is neglected or whatever, and there's this story of what is Prabhu's name? I don't know. I never got to meet him. This Prabhu that was Prabhupada disciple that was staying here in Ponce, and now he's in Vrindavan. Akila Prabhu, yeah. There's a story of him that he was like in New York, right? And he's like a lifelong brahmachari, and he went to New York and they wouldn't let him stay there in the ashram or something, and so he was like living on the street, So it seems like Krishna's not taking care of him. And San Francisco, Berkeley, okay, yeah. So Berkeley, so it seems in that case externally like Krishna's not taking care of his devotee, but we can understand that it's not about taking care of our physical body and making sure that we have all the comforts of life and all that. We might be in that situation someday where we have to live on the street, and be associated with all these homeless drug addicts and whatever. But as long as we continue to take shelter of Krishna, he will protect our devotional service, which is what we're ultimately praying for. We're praying that Krishna will protect our devotional service and give us unbroken, uninterrupted devotional service to him. Because this is what is actually of value in life. It's not about, again, protecting our physical body and making ourselves very comfortable. This is all an illusion. This is all just Maya's trick, that you can have a nice, comfortable bed, nice home, nice AC, internet, fast internet, so much money, have a nice personal chef to cook all your food. Eventually, you're going to get to the point where old age catches up to you, disease catches up to you, and death catches up to you. So there's no point in ultimately arranging for the comfort of the body, because again, as we understand through the Bhagavatam and the Shastra, that the body comes with a certain amount of enjoyment and suffering. It comes with a certain amount of pleasure and pain. It's already prescribed to it at the time of birth. So, as Parameshwar Prabhu says, you could either go out and become a billionaire and, make a bunch of money and do big things in the world, or you could go sit in this corner and just sit there and never move from that spot for the rest of your life. You'll get the exact same amount of happiness and distress either way. So it makes just much more sense. It's the only sensical thing to do in that situation is to understand that devotional service is the only thing we really do have, the only thing that is permanent, the only thing that lasts with us into the next life, and fully dive into that ocean, and fully dive into that process of attempting to serve the orders of the spiritual master, fulfill those orders, even no matter how impossible they may seem. We've been given the order to establish Varnashram farm communities in the West, and it seems impossible. It's like, how are we going to do that? We were just at New Talavan, me and Chandan, and they're doing some really amazing things there. They have Dvibhuj Prabhu is farming all this land, and they have nice cow protection, and the deities are so amazing there. And it's been so many years that it's taken to establish that. And even then, nothing against them. It's amazing what they're doing. But Prabhupada ultimately wanted that these communities would be self-sustaining and off the grid, not using electricity and all these things. So it's still quite a far leap from that state that they're at there to fully off-the-grid Varanashram communities. And of course, there's not so many devotees there. You would want to have more devotees there as well to help out. But this seems like an impossible task. We're just a bunch of young people, most of us have been living in a city our whole life, except we do have some nice farmers, of course, that are skilled in this and able to pioneer in this way. But for most of us, we lived in a city our whole life. We don't know anything about farming. We don't know anything about living off the land. You go there and there's like ants and like all these like things. It's like, dang, like I don't want to live around this. This is crazy. But it's something that we have to do. It's the order of the spiritual master. So there's no question of not following it. There's no question of not trying to do it. And Prabhupada said, if we build these communities, millions of people will come. So it's simply a matter of having faith in that statement, having faith in Prabhupada's statements and what he's said and what he's given us, that if we simply believe that that's true, that if we have these communities that millions of people will come, we would be so fired up to do it. We would be completely, devoted, dedicated, no question in our mind to making this happen as soon as possible. And it's not that we're not that way, but, it's just, it can seem insurmountable, it can seem overwhelming to do such a thing, establish something from scratch with nothing, raise all the money for it, get the land for it, then work the land, make it, what is it, arable is it called? Like where it's like farmable? Fertile, yeah. And then like, have all the composting and then plant it, it's just like so much to do. And then getting cows is a whole other thing. You have to have 1 acre per cow. So if you want to protect hundreds of cows, you need hundreds of acres. And it's a whole thing, so it gets expensive and then it gets, complicated and like that. And of course, on top of that, we need a lot of devotees to go live there and work there. So, that's me and Chanda, and we're working on that. And that's also, difficult. It's a struggle. It's like, how do we make people devotees? These people aren't so interested, but you just have to push on and have faith in the spiritual master and meditate upon that order, and the mercy will come. And it's not through our own power, it's not through our own skills, our own intelligence or anything like that this will happen. It's through the mercy of the Guru Parampara that we will receive the intelligence. We will receive Krishna will give us the words to speak to convince people of Krishna consciousness, and he will, send people that have, the Lakshmi to help fund the farm community and all these things. If we just have faith and we just have perseverance and we just continue on, these things will happen. We're seeing it already, and we just continue on in that way. And I was just also meditating on the fact, just all the amazing things that can happen when a disciple is fully surrendered. Of course, the most prevalent, I guess you could say, example is Srila Prabhupada, and that he was meditating on this order of his spiritual master from the time he received it when he was a young man. And it took him, a whole lifetime of so many struggles, you could say. It seems like struggles, but he's transcendental, of course. But, he was writing his magazines in English and publishing those, and even just to get those published was a big, hassle because of the wartime, and the paper wasn't available and all these things. But he finally got that published, and then he was, distributing the magazines on the street, and a bull like gored him, right, is what it's called. And like, imagine the struggle. My God, like we can't imagine. It's like the worst we get is like someone says something nasty to us, or maybe like, hits us or whatever. Matya got hit and like his gland, whatever, he was bleeding a little bit, but being gored by a bull, like that's like really intense, and then he continued on, kept going. He lost his wife, sold his Bhagavad Gita, so many setbacks over and over, and he just kept going. And then at the age of 70, came over to America, went through so much struggle, heart attacks, seemingly struggle. Heart attacks, all this, came to New York, nobody was there that he knew. All these strange people in the modes of passion and ignorance, just doing horrible things, despicable things that can't even be mentioned. He was in Vrindavan before he was happy, but he knew that he had to fulfill the order of his spiritual master. So he went through so much, again, seemingly struggle for that, in order to teach us, in order to show us that this is the proper mood of a disciple. We see Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that They attempted to assassinate him. He was going after all these Apasambradayas, the Sahajas and caste Goswamis, all these people that were deviated from the true principles of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and he was openly criticizing them, openly, just destroying their philosophy, and establishing the proper Siddhanta. And they tried to kill him, as Mahotsa Prabhu was saying, that they tried to bribe $2 or $3 million worth of rupees back then to have him killed. And there was a whole thing where he had to switch dress with one of his disciples and create that decoy, and then he was able to escape in that way. But these devotees, they go through so much. They're literally willing to be killed in order to fulfill the orders of their spiritual master. My own Guru Maharaj tells the story of that when he was I think it was in Bengal or Bangladesh or something like that, that he was going down the river one day, and it was during the rainy season, and they were going town to town preaching, village to village, and it was so much rain, and eventually he saw a dead body floating down the river, and he was like, okay, now I guess it's time to just go somewhere and lay low for a little bit, so it's like you're putting yourself in so much danger, so much so much danger, so much anxiety, you could say, just to fulfill the orders of the spiritual master, to go and preach Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada, again, he went across the ocean, it's insane. And then, there's also this story I heard that I think Mahotsa Prabhu was telling it about Tamal Krishna Maharaj, that he was in Vrindavan, I think it was, with Prabhupada, and I don't remember all the details of the story, but he was in Vrindavan, he was on the second or third floor of a building with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, oh man, I really want some of that, I want to drink some cold Ganga water, And Tamal Krishna Maharaj is like, well, how do I get that? Where, what do I do? And he's like, it's at the bottom you got to go way deep down and get it down there. That's where it's the really good stuff. And immediately, Tamal Krishna Maharaj grabbed some kind of receptacle for the water and ran out and jumped out of the window and dove into the water from the second or third floor, and dove down into the Ganga and grabbed the water and came back and gave it to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, this is my disciple. So we should have that conviction. We should have that level of intensity, that level of surrender to the spiritual master, willing to lose our life for the spiritual master, just on a whim, just like anything. I was thinking about this. Fired up means we're willing to walk into fire, literally. And so, this fire is referenced so many times in, what we do. The fire of Sankirtan we talk about. There's the initiation fire. We also, talk about the fire of material existence, the forest fire of material existence. So, and the fire of, renunciation. So there's so much different references for fire, and the fire is a very intense thing. Parameshwar Prabhu says that you have to stay, in order to stay fixed up, you have to be in that blue part of the fire, which, if you know, is it's the hottest part. The blue is hotter, and then the orange and red, it's less hot. But if you stay in that blue part, you don't fall out and become, ash. You just stay red hot in there. There's also this analogy, of course, of the iron in the fire that becomes like fire. So fire is very purifying. It's very intense, So we have to stay in that, and through that we're able to get this potency to fulfill the orders of the spiritual master. So many, all these examples, all these stories are very intense. Prabhupada going on the Jaladuta and having these heart attacks, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur almost being assassinated, Tamal Krishna jumping out the window. It's it's very intense. It's their consciousness is so fixed upon fulfilling the orders that they're not even concerned about their body in any way. They're not concerned about their own happiness, their own health in any way. And so, I'm recognizing how far away I am from this, that I have to really work on this, that I need to be less worried about my own comfort, about my own, so-called happiness, and simply surrender to the orders of the spiritual master and completely fix my mind on that. We shouldn't be thinking, oh, like, how am I going to be, happy in life, and what am I going to do later, and how am I going to, follow this order? It's so hard. It's so difficult. This is the kind of Shudra mentality that, I have had my whole life, and that we are working to get out of through this process of devotional service. That we come up to a higher platform. We come up to the platform of Sattva Guna, and we're able to remain fixed in our devotional service and become purified. And the karmis, they say that we're super fanatical for this, right? They were willing to die for our spiritual master. We're willing to jump out of a window. We're willing to walk into fire, all these things. But actually, they're doing some similar things if you think about it. Like, everybody that joins the military, they're doing it because they're willing to die for their country. They're willing to go over and, they're willing to kill for their country, kill other people, and they're willing to die for their country as well. After 9/11, there were so many people that they joined the military because of some sentiment for America, that they want to protect this country and the people in it, and they're willing to go. And even though the fact that the wars that were started didn't really do anything to protect America, it's just to get some oil, they went into it with this sentiment, and this was very much exploited in order to get more people to join the military. And so, again, these people, again, are praised in the media as heroes and all these things. And, okay, what they're doing is somewhat admirable. It's, it's somewhat selfless. They're trying to serve, but they're so misguided is the problem. They're misguided into believing that this fallible soldier of the country that they're serving is somehow worth serving, when it's not. It's actually nothing to do with them at all. They're not the body. They're not an American, but they've been conditioned into the belief that they are, and that by protecting this country, they're doing some higher service to humanity and to the world. And other karmis, they will go into a burning fire in the house to, again, like I said, to like save their family members or something like that. So it's not such an unheard of thing that people are so passionate about something, or so. We're not trying to be in the mode of passion or anything, but they care about something so much that they're willing to put their life on the line for it, their country, their family, all these things. And it's actually pretty much all the time it's seen as a very good thing. If someone walks into a fire and saves their family, they're a hero. If someone goes and dies for their country, they're a hero. But ultimately, they're just forgotten in time. And there's this graveyard in Washington, D.C. of all these soldiers that have died, and it's just like this. It's just all the grave markings are the same. And it's like pretty depressing. It's like they're all pretty much forgotten. It's like, okay, we salute them, but nobody really knows who they are. Nobody really cares about their sacrifice so much individually. But the difference is that the spiritual master will be very pleased with our sacrifice, and he will be very grateful, and Krishna as well. And this doesn't go away. We don't lose this. So any sacrifice we're making now isn't lost to time. Isn't that when this body is done, then that sacrifice is useless. The spiritual master is our master birth after birth. John May Prabhu say that. So we're cultivating this loving relationship with him, birth after birth after birth, and so by giving our life, and it's just one life to give. So what we should actually have the mentality of is giving life after life after life after life to him, giving millions of lives to him, because what he's given us is so much more valuable than as many lives as we can imagine. Millions and millions of lives. It's so much more valuable because, again, like this samsara davanala lila loka, he's saving us from this blazing fire of material existence that we're all suffering in. And we have been suffering in since time immemorial. And he's coming and he's pouring this water, he's the rain cloud that's pouring this water on this fire and extinguishing this suffering that we've been going through. And so we can exit out of this material fire, this fire of material, this forest fire of material existence, and enter into this fire of Sankirtan, this fire of surrender to the spiritual master. And through that we won't be burned. We'll actually come out completely purified. Because again, fire is very purifying. We'll be purified by this fire. And all of our anarthas, all of our misconceptions, all of our doubts, all of the dirty things within the heart, all of our material desires, they'll all be completely purified by existing within this fire and giving our whole life to this fire, giving not just this life, but the next life and the next life and the next life. And this, I don't remember exactly where I heard this. I think Bhaktivinoda Thakur said this, that the paraphrasing of it is that you make progress like anything when you adopt this attitude of forevermore, no matter what. Parameshwar Prabhu says this, but when you start adopting this attitude of, okay, I'm just going to do this no matter what happens, I'm going to keep going. There's no doubt in your mind, no deviation in your mind of, well, maybe I can do this, maybe I can go do that, maybe I can go make some money this way, or maybe I can maybe I can serve my spiritual master in this other way. No, it's that you completely surrender to the spiritual master, take up his instructions as they are, and you go on and on and on in that way, and you just make the vow that no matter what, forevermore, I'm not going to change, I'm not going to deviate from this. No matter what happens, I can be, just living on the street, homeless, just like whatever, being like kicked and spat upon by people all day, every day, and I'm going to keep going on this. I'm just going to keep going. And this also reminds me of this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekaha akuranandana, that those who are on this path, their aim is one. Who are resolute in purpose, their aim is one. So, and those who are not on this path, their intelligence is splayed out and many branched. So by being on this path, your intelligence becomes single-pointed, and you become simply focused on fulfilling the orders of the spiritual master. And the spiritual master is simply focused on fulfilling the orders of his spiritual master, and so on and so on. And when you have, the bona fide spiritual master, it's, because they're simply following the orders of their spiritual master, and it goes on like that. Ultimately, we understand that they are, these are the desires of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, that he wants these things to happen. Whatever the spiritual master wants to happen is what Krishna wants to happen. And so we can rest assured knowing that we are under the protection, under the shelter of this Guru Parampara, and under the shelter of Lord Chaitanya and Krishna himself. And we're able to take that protection and just keep that same order and continue on and just continue passing it along to other people. And so, distribute books, establish Daiva Varnashram farm communities, and we will ultimately please our spiritual master, and we'll please Krishna himself, and we'll please, the entire Guru Parampara, all the acharyas. And through that, we'll become supremely happy and blissful and perfect our lives, go back to Godhead. So that's all I had to say for the class. If there's any questions, comments, corrections, please feel free to ask. Yes, Avadu Prabhu.
Thank you, Ali Krsna Prabhu. I just have a comment. There's a lot of nice purports actually in this section you're reading from the 4th canto. Mm-hmm. And in there, that same chapter, Prabhupada writes that in the departure or the absence of the spiritual master, the disciple should cry or just weep.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that. And it's so amazing to see these advanced senior devotees. And you're almost like taken aback because they've managed to serve the mission for so long. Mm-hmm. And even if you joined in like 1973, Prabhupada left in 77, so you were only with Prabhupada for a short time. And they've managed to just carry on year after year after year, and the level of faith that takes is just like, wow. It's inspiring, but I've always kind of tried to think more about that statement.
Yeah. We were watching this a while ago. Me, Mahotsa Prabhu, and Abhimanyu Sudha Prabhu were watching Vedanta Deshika, this movie about Vedanta Deshika, and then there's a scene where his spiritual master leaves, and he's like, lamenting, and it was really emotional because it's like, Moses said, like, this is the worst day for a disciple, the worst day of their life. And it's true, and then it reminds me of what, some Prabhupada disciples say about when Prabhupada left, that, obviously they were, very sad, but then I believe it's your spiritual master that said, they were distributing books at that time, and they heard, and they just went out on books because Prabhupada's right here. He's right here. He didn't leave. He's right here. And so we're just going to go out and keep serving him in that way. And so if you have that mentality, that's, really elevated. That's a high level, that you understand that your spiritual master is always with you. Prabhupada said, I know my spiritual master is always with me. He never left me. He's come with me. I didn't come alone to the West. And I was just recently I was in New Taliban, and I was with Dvibuj Prabhu, and he was speaking about Prabhupada, and it was really touching because he never had any personal conversations with Prabhupada or really close interactions or like that, but he related this story of this first time he saw Prabhupada was at a Ratha Yatra, I think it was Chicago or something, and he was really far away, like he was probably from here to like the front door, maybe further, from the Rath cart, and it was the second cart, and he wanted to take darshan of Prabhupada, so he ran up there, and he turned around and he could see Prabhupada. And it was so far away, you can't really, and there's obviously a huge crowd of devotees, but he said that Prabhupada looked right at him, and he just looked at him for like a minute or two straight, and he felt like, they just felt like, and because he had this desire to see Prabhupada and like connect with Prabhupada, and he felt like Prabhupada was reciprocating with that in that moment, and he started crying when in front of us, talking about this, and getting emotional. When he talks about Prabhupada, he just starts crying. It's like he's really connected to Prabhupada, and he's saying, the Murti in the temple, that is Prabhupada. If you have the eyes to see, that is Prabhupada there. It's not that he's anywhere; he's right here. And so, talking to Prabhupada disciples is really, really powerful. Thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
Just like a point, I think you said that the Pandavas can be compared to the orders of the spiritual master. I don't understand how that came about.
Well, because I was just saying, because she lived on to protect them and to serve them, that similarly the disciple lives on to protect the orders of the spiritual master. I don't know. It's kind of a speculation. I know.
It's a little stretching.
Yeah.
Because generally they do that. There's like the five Pandavas are the senses. They represent the sense. So you just have to be careful.
Okay.
It's like her particular, her duty is to take care of the children.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she's doing. But, they're particularly on the instruction. It's a little stretch.
Yeah.
Another question is like, we see that, surrender to the spiritual master. But sometimes we see devotees who try to do that, they struggle in their spiritual life. Just like we're in the presence of the spiritual master, we hear from Shastra we should be, the association of a pure devotee basically is liberation, being that. But we see, like, practically that, like, it's like more than often is that the devotees struggle. So, like, how do we understand that? That following the orders, you're serving the spiritual master, you're in his personal presence, but what's happening? Where's your spiritual life? What's happening? Your mind somewhere else. Your whole, like, how do we understand that?
Yeah.
And then what is one meant to do in that state where he can't follow the orders strictly, and the spiritual master gives him, he may have an order, or he may think that the spiritual master wants him to do a particular thing, or the spiritual master may express a desire, but he's like not qualified to do that. But it's the order of the spiritual master. What does one do in that state? Because like that surrender is there, but at the same time, it's like if you try to surrender to that instruction, but your spiritual life kind of like you can see you start to struggle in your spiritual life by trying to follow that instruction. Sometimes I've seen that in many cases in certain devotees.
Yeah.
How like.
Well, I don't have so much experience with that. Anyways, but it comes down to perseverance and sincerity, and seeking guidance of your senior devotees as well. If the spiritual master gives you an order and you're struggling to fulfill it and struggling in your spiritual life because of it, you should speak about that with other devotees and explain that, and they'll be able to guide you because they've probably gone through the similar thing. Struggle, like Prabhupada, like I was saying, that he got this order, and it took him so long, seemingly, to like actually fulfill it to the extent he wanted to, but he didn't like lose faith, or he didn't like just give up. He just kept going and kept going, kept going, kept going. And this what is it? Tatena kampam susamikshramano punjana evat makartam vipakam hridvagva purbir vidadan namaste jiveta yumukti padesadai bhak, that if you just earnestly and patiently wait for the mercy of the Lord, and you just tolerate the reactions of your past activities, and you're just offering obeisances to the Lord, speaking about in this verse, but also can refer to the spiritual master. For that person, the liberation is already guaranteed, and they've already So it's just like this idea of patience. Nowadays, people aren't really patient to like see things through. They want instant gratification, so they think, oh, I've been ordered to do this, I can't do it right now, so therefore I can't do it. But it's like sometimes it takes a long time to fulfill that order. I hope that's okay.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, in like when we're distributing books, specifically to like Indians, probably a lot of us have this experience of women, like Indian women, they have this culture of being very chaste to their husband, but it actually comes in the way of them like buying books, oh, I need to talk to my husband first, or that's like a really big excuse.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not like they're, whatever it might be, and also like, yeah. But and also like I know in my case, and probably most of the women in Krishna consciousness, is they came not because they were like very chaste to like the desires of like their family and stuff like that. Like they kind of like transgressed that like etiquette in order to be more serious about Krishna consciousness, and like here Prabhupada is like basically recommending this as a principle which is favorable for Krishna consciousness, but we have so much experience of this being a principle which like disqualified, like doesn't even like give one the chance to like practice Krishna consciousness. So like how do we understand this? Like, in one sense we're trying to implement this, in another sense we have practical experience of how this, destroys one's chance of like going back to Godhead, at least in this life,
Yeah. Well, with the Indians on books thing, like so just say that the wife is going to ask the husband, right? So if the husband is properly situated, if he's properly cultured, he'll understand that having these books is extremely important and necessary, and he'll have like proper respect for sadhus, and understand that they're giving their life to Krishna and their spiritual master. I should, if they're asking for charity, I should give them charity. I'm in the position that I have money and I can do this. So if they're understanding of that culture, then naturally they'll give and they'll take the books. And in terms of if the wife actually goes and asks about that, though, it's probably, a lot of times it's just like an excuse to like, she doesn't go and say, oh, honey, like I really want these books, can we please get them? Like, if she did, he would get them for her, like, so it's like, that can be an excuse. But if they're properly situated, they'll understand the value of it and they'll take. So that's an important thing, is to instill that culture, because again, like it's kind of like a mishmash. Like maybe they have like that background of culture where they like are submissive to the husband, but they're also like westernized to an extent where they're like, they're not so interested in transcendental knowledge maybe, and they're like more interested in like, they come to, generally people come to America to like engage in sense gratification. So that's there. And then in terms of like leaving the family and stuff, like, if you're leaving like an Adharmic family that eats like, cows and stuff like that, and in order to practice Krishna consciousness, like it's bona fide, So it's like, it's not that like Vedic culture is established here in the West, so it's not that, if that makes sense, what I'm saying? Like, it's not like we go based off of that, like, oh, because you left your family, that's wrong, It's like, you come here and you practice, and actually you're liberating your family by practicing Krishna consciousness from their sinful activities. And again, if they were properly situated and properly understood the value of this, then they would encourage it. It's like, And traditionally, from 5 to 25, you go to the Gurukuli, the boys, and they get trained up, and they're brahmacharis for 20 years, and then they move into married life and stuff like that. So generally, it's like that's the proper culture and the proper understanding. But it's so far from that in the West that we have to kind of, take what we have now and move along with that. Try to change it. Yes, Prabhu.
This is answered in the 7th canto. 7th canto, chapter 11, text 18, text 28. Chaste woman should not be greedy, but satisfied in all circumstances. She must be very expert in handling household affairs and should be very conversant with religious principles. She should speak pleasingly and truthfully and should be very careful and always clean and pure. Thus, a chaste woman should engage with affection in the service of a husband who is not fallen. So the word here is apatitam, one who is not fallen. Bhajet, should worship. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he says that one who is a devotee, anyone who is a devotee is sinless. One who is not a devotee, however, is the most fallen and condemned. It is recommended, therefore, that a chaste wife not associate with a fallen husband. A fallen husband is one who is addicted to the 4 principles of sinful activity, namely illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. Specifically, if one is not a soul surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is understood to be contaminated. Thus, a chaste woman is advised not to agree to serve such a husband. It is not that a chaste woman should be like a slave while her husband is Naradhama, the lowest of men. Although the duties of a woman are different from those of a man, a chaste woman is not meant to serve a fallen husband. If her husband is fallen, it is recommended that she give up his association. Giving up the association of her husband does not mean, however, that a woman should marry again and thus indulge in prostitution. If a chaste woman unfortunately marries a husband who is fallen, she should live separately from him. Similarly, a husband can separate himself from a woman who is not chaste according to the description of the Shastra. The conclusion is that a husband should be a pure Vaishnava and a woman should be a chaste wife with all the symptoms described in this regard. Then both of them will be happy and make spiritual progress in Krishna consciousness. So, Varnashrama system is followed up till the point that one is ready for and qualified. That qualified has to be underlined for renunciation, which is generally achieved in the stage of vanaprastha and then for males also in the stage of sannyas. But the point here is that we follow Varnashram Dharma for the sake of promoting Krishna consciousness and practicing Krishna consciousness, not otherwise. This Achintya Chaitanya Prabhu, I think that was his name, who came, one of the disciples of Shivaram Maharaj who came here, Brahmachari. I know it's some Chaitanya, I don't remember very well. Ananda Chaitanya, that's right, Ananda Chaitanya. So, when he came, he said one thing that kind of stuck to me. He said, Shivaram Maharaj is, he's very insistent on us understanding that, we are establishing Varnashram Dharma, but we're not trying to become farmers or craftsmen or whatever. We're trying to become devotees. We're doing all this because we want to live in Vrindavan. And, the devotees in Vrindavan live like that. We want to be like Prabhupada said, make Vrindavan village. And this is the point, that ultimately we are trying to become devotees, and Varnashram Dharma helps us become situated in that proper platform. But whenever the rules of Varnashram Dharma are contrary to that principle, we hear things like this. Here it should be very clearly noted why this cannot be misused. The reason it cannot be misused is that if a husband and wife separate, they have to live. Not that, like Prabhupada says, that it's not that the woman should, after giving up the association of her husband, does not mean, however, that a woman should marry again and thus indulge in prostitution. It's a heavy thing. Cannot be done lightly. And she very seriously considered that and did it, and then she sticks on to it. It's not very easy to do it. And it cannot be done whimsically either. It's a big thing. So that's why these things cannot be misused. In case of somebody on books, yeah, we encourage them to take the book because husband's not a devotee. He'll take the book. We don't tell them to leave the husband because she also is not a devotee yet. So she has to become a devotee and she should try to make the husband a devotee. Anyways, all these things are there. But,
So I think second half of your question is also like that, they're encouraged to do that, but then they come into Krishna consciousness and they have to stop that propensity. That's like a part of your question.
Was it?
When you were saying that, the women, sometimes we see women, they're with family, but then they have to kind of give up that role a little bit and into coming to Krishna consciousness and go contrary. But then when they come into devotion service, they can't have the same mentality because then it leads to fall down of devotion service. So how do we stop that specifically? It seems like that's also like one of your questions. Like we have to maintain
But it's the same thing because, to practice Krishna consciousness, she can act in a manner that's slightly displeasing, not in a manner that turns her whole family upside down.
Yeah,
but the
but
point is, it's still the same thing that her Krishna consciousness matters. She being Krishna conscious matters, even if the husband doesn't like.
I think the main point is sometimes we see that in devotion service, people come in and that propensity remains, and then all these deviations, start to come out. Like, is that kind of?
They didn't understand the principle.
That's the main point. Like, we have to be strong in the principles that we're presenting. All this feminist stuff coming in, that's what it's like. Starts to divert things and takes the thing in that route.
I mean, you can argue like that. Okay, the brahmacharis are encouraged to leave their family and come. So, say your parents are not accepting of you joining full time, you still reject them. And you rejected authority, but then you come into the ashram, you still accept authority. You understand the principle is not really. Never occurred to me that because I rejected my family, I reject the those who are guiding me also. It's like if you understand the principle, I don't think.
Yeah.
If you don't understand, it's true.
Okay. Mataji's anything? Yes.
I think one thing that I was thinking of when the discussion was just being made about Matsi Prabhu's question is that I know particularly, speaking from my own experience and the experiences that I've seen of women in the West, is that there actually is not that culture so much of actually submitting to your parents, so to speak. The parents, they send us off to college. We're already basically independent. So when we come into the association of devotees, it's kind of not so much the same as leaving a cultured system where the woman's actually protected by her parents, what Varnashram is supposed to be, So it's already broken and kind of the parents kind of put on I know at least mine, put on a charade, in the sense of that we're leaving them, so to speak, but they've already pushed us out. So we're already in the sense of having that independence. So it doesn't, I don't see it so much as a conflict so much. The parents just kind of put on a show and make it seem like it, but they've already given us away, so to speak, to society. So it's, yeah, so that was my take on it. And we even can see I don't have so much experience, but I know from what I've heard from Bhaktivikas Maharaj's other disciples, not even just Indian-bodied Matajis, but also some women that are just out in the West still. But sometimes Maharaj does actually encourage these women to stay within that family atmosphere if they actually have some type of culture, where the parents are actually providing them with protection. He encourages them to still practice Krishna consciousness to a level that's favorable to themselves and also to their family structure, because there actually is that healthy dynamic there where the woman's receiving protection. But in situations where, like myself, where they just, the idea is, you go to college and then you start your life, and then we'll see you every so often, So in those type of situations, I think it's a bit more reasonable, for someone to join a brahmacharini ashram, so to speak. But in situations where there is some actual cultured protection of the women, it can be more favorable for the woman to actually stay in that system and then take to marriage and hopefully of a devotee and then progress in that way. traditionally speaking, even in this modern society. And then my question was, I believe it was a verse that you had quoted, Prabhu, and I don't remember it exactly now because my mind is so bad, but you had mentioned like meditating on the order of the spiritual master, and like that's like how like the fulfillment comes, something to that regard.
Yeah.
If you could just tell me where that is, please.
When the servant meditates upon the order of the spiritual master, he becomes endowed with the ability to fulfill that order.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was from one of Vishnu Chitta Prabhu's classes on the Ramayana. Some of my notes in that, so I'm not sure. I don't know the exact reference, but it's in the cardinal teachings of the Ramayana. Yeah.
Okay, definitely.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
I just had a question about the verse that Vishuchitta Prabhu, the purport that you were reading, where it was saying that, like if a woman's husband is fallen, then she should give up the association. And just for like clarification, because at least from my understanding, listening to like classes by Guru Maharaj, it was that like even if like your husband is fallen to some extent, that we're to still be chaste to him and like stick by him. So I guess like, how does that work with what Srila Prabhupada is saying?
Yeah, I was curious about that too, actually, because from what I understood, like the wife's duty is to serve the husband, and she doesn't get like, even if the husband is not a pure Vaishnava. Like.
I mean, it's a big discussion, to be honest. Kind of opened Pandora's box with that verse. So there's the example of Pishima, Prabhupada's sister, who was initiated, a god sister of Srila Prabhupada, and who served her meat-eating husband, cooking meat for him, and I mean, he used to beat her up and all that kind of, pretty not good story. So, and she served. However, the point is that Srila Prabhupada is specifically making the point about a husband who's fallen, and we can understand that this is somebody who does not want to reform, and always in Krishna consciousness we have to try to reform people. This is like not just within a family, but this is in terms of like, devotees, say even for instance, sometimes it is so that maybe some devotees may be struggling with the regulative principles or something like this. They're not immediately, thrown out of the temple or, removed from their service or, there's always an attempt for reformation, and that sincere attempt has to be there. However, in the modern age at least, there are Vedic examples. There are plenty of Vedic examples of women who serve extremely fallen husbands, to the extent that they even help the husband associate with his paramour, and all kinds of stories and how that chastity is glorified in the Vedic scriptures. But we have to understand that ultimately we are not emphasizing on chastity just for the sake of chastity, but everything is being emphasized because whatever is being emphasized because it has to be favorable towards Krishna consciousness, practicing of Krishna consciousness. And we can see that this is what Pishima did is something that is very, very, very difficult to do. And unless the woman herself is extremely strong, and she's Prabhupada's sister. Who's Srila Prabhupada? What he did. Okay, Srila Prabhupada himself, what did he do? He lived, with drug addicts. He came with 40 rupees on a ship, and he didn't use those 40 rupees either, by himself at the age of 70, suffering 2 heart attacks. This is there, this is him, and that's his blood sister. And she's made of, of this. She came from the same family. She's kind of made of the same stuff as he is, and is also a pure devotee. It takes, and so in one sense, I personally look at that story as just showing this is Prabhupada is made of like transcendental steel. His sister is also made of that same his god sister, same potency, and she didn't exhibit that by being some world preacher, but she exhibited that by doing something that even in her day and age is something that it's very difficult for them to do. So we also have to be realistic, and we have to take guidance, but we should, having practiced Krishna consciousness for some time, we should also be aware of what we're capable of doing and what we're not capable of doing. And Srila Prabhupada's instruction here is very pertinent because ultimately one should remember that the main principle is that one is able to practice Krishna consciousness. And one has to, one shouldn't be, any decision that's taken whimsically, any decision that's taken without due process and consideration is most likely, something, just like if somebody, somebody does some mistake at the temple and for some small thing is thrown out of the temple or something. It's a whimsical thing to do. There's no attempt for reformation, and that involves some austerity, some patience, some tolerance is required. So that will be required of the wife also. And it will be required of the husband as well. But after several reasonable attempts, if there is still things are unreasonable to the extent that the wife is not able to practice Krishna consciousness, just like, Mataji was making this point about how, that if there is some semblance of culture, some semblance of protection, it's good to be able to try to adjust within that environment and still practice Krishna consciousness. But nothing is expected to be done at the expense of one's Krishna consciousness. This is the main point. That if it comes to the extent where, I don't know, husband's trying to choke the wife if she even touches her beads, it's a big problem. That's a big problem. It's very difficult to imagine how. And another interesting thing to understand is that while Pishima served a husband who was a meat eater, who was, who did beat her and exit things, never did he stop her from practicing her Krishna consciousness. This was a point that I don't remember where I heard this, but she was able to continue to follow, Krishna consciousness, practice Krishna consciousness, and it seems that she was grateful for that. And like he did beat her, but he didn't force her to eat meat. Again, it does take someone, woman, man, whatever. It's like after you become a devotee, meat itself is a very appalling thing. It's so, and to actually cook it and to be able to tolerate that. And you can also think of this in another sense that, if she had left her husband, she would have to go and be a widow or something in Vrindavan or something, whether that was a good situation or not. Some of these widow ashrams, unfortunately, they're actually prostitution houses, in Vrindavan for the Babajis. Anyways, there's so many things. So it might have not been the best thing for her to leave her husband. That might have been the best situation that she was able to practice Krishna consciousness in. Difficult to know all the circumstances. But nothing violates the principle of being Krishna conscious, but one has to do it after careful consideration. I hope that answers the question.
Okay.
Hare
Srimad
Krishna.
Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.